So today we're going back. We're starting the React section. We're starting with the first lesson, which is React components and state. As you remember, in JavaScript, we finished with building components. So we're kind of extending that components in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, if you want to build your own components, if you want to manipulate the DOM, it takes a lot of work. So it is it's a hassle, basically selecting all those DOM, making sure that if you select a DOM that you manipulate it. If you wanna remove it, you remove it. You add another one. You kind of like you have to go back and forth. So you have to do a lot of selection. You have to do a lot of manipulating. At the same time, the main DOM, people say that the DOM itself is a little bit slower, especially depending on which browser you're using. It's a little bit slower. It's not as efficient as the React virtual DOM, which we will learn. So React came, the Facebook team came, and they said, okay, we need to find an easier way to manipulate the DOM, easier way to kind of like add things to it. For example, when you're using Facebook, I always take it as an example. Since they started React, for example, if you add in like a comment on Facebook, then that comment, when you hit submit, it will just basically add to the comment list, and it will not refresh the whole page. So basically, that is a component. The comment is a component. The overall different parts of the page is a component. So they all work together. So in that case, React was created to make it easy for you to kind of manipulate the DOM. So that is what React is, and that's the problem it solves. Explain what components are and how they work with React. So before I do that, actually, yeah, so what are components? So because we're talking about React components. Components, we did talk about a little bit in JavaScript. Components are just a small piece of code that can do something, that has its functionality, the CSS, the JavaScript, all the functionality it needs, and the data it needs to kind of do something. You could also take a component and move it somewhere else, and it could still work. So you could actually, use the same component in different places, and also change the data. So sometimes you could have a component that displays a user information, and then you have that same component can display maybe like let's say a store information or something like that. Change the user to store, and then that's it, you're done. So components are reusable piece of code, and we will learn that. I'll show you an example. Explain what is state in web development, and demonstrate how to make a React component stateful. Okay. So to demonstrate state, we have to go into the app and build something, and I'll show you that. Basically, in general, what is state? State is basically the condition where the React application is currently on. So excuse me. So state is basically what React basically is it's currently on. So let's say it could be on a state of showing information. It could be state of basically there is also something called stateless, basically not having a data, and mostly it's used for data. So if you want to display a data, then you put it on the state. It's basically, that's what the state is, and I'll show you as an example. Let's see. Let me get some water. I don't know, somebody keep calling me on WhatsApp. Okay, so and then here, change the state of component with a click listener. We'll do that too. So if you go to react.reactjs.org, this is the thing we're learning. React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. React is not for the backend, so you're not dealing with the databases, you're not dealing with the backend, you're only dealing with the front end. Okay, so and then React is declarative. React makes it painless to create interactive UIs. User user interface. Design simple views for each state in your application. React will effectively update and render just the right components when your data changes. Okay, component-based. Build encapsulated components that manage their own state, then compose them to make a complex UI. Since component logic is written in JavaScript instead of templates, you can easily pass rich data through your app and keep the state out of the DOM. So how does React look like? So React is basically, there's two ways you could write React. You could write it in class-based, or you could write it in functional-based. So this is shown class-based. And remember that in JavaScript, classes are actually prototypes. So they're actually just a function underneath the hood using prototypes. So classes are not native to JavaScript. So we're using that, and we're inheriting from React, that component. We're rendering something. Usually we're rendering something called JSX, which shows here. JSX is something that looks like HTML, but it's not. It's just, it has all the syntax of, not all, but most of the syntax of HTML to make it easy for basically React developers come from HTML and basically just right away start developing. Actually, this HTML, which is JSX, is a compiled. This is actually a JavaScript. So if we basically untick this JSX, you can see exactly what's happening underneath the hood. You guys learned create element. Remember, in JavaScript, we learned how to create element when we were building components. You basically create an element, and then there's some special syntax here that they're using. And then remember that every every component has, by default, has a props. But if the prop is empty, it's empty. Otherwise, the props has whatever you passed in. So this is basically what it looks like. So to make your life easier, this is what it is. Underneath the hood, what's happening is we're using Babel and Webpack, which are two systems. Babel, JavaScript. Babel is a compiler for JavaScript. You write something and then you can translate it for whatever way you want. And also the good thing about Babel is you don't have to worry about versions of JavaScript. So you could actually use the latest JavaScript, even if the browser doesn't support that. We're also using Webpack to compile all the, Webpack basically takes all your files and everything and compiles it into a simple JavaScript, CSS, and then a few files. So that's what it does. So it takes all this like mumbo jumbo, and then it turns into a simple static website. So you don't need to learn all this Webpack. It helps you to learn Webpack in the future, but you don't have to learn Webpack right now. So that's React. So let's go ahead and actually install React in our computer. So we go to docs here. So every time when you're trying to do something, you go to the framework, the website for the framework, and then if you want to install it, you go to the documents or get started. You see somewhere get started. So it's right here, get started, and they will give you a way to install it. So let's try it out. So let's see. We're looking for a special way to install it. Let's see. Main concept, hello world. We don't want all this. We just want to install it right now. Yeah, so we're looking for this. So there's something called create React app. It's just a command that Facebook basically put together that we can use to install React applications. We don't have to do the manual installation. If you want to do the manual installation, you have to install Webpack, you have to install Babel, then you have to install the React code, and then put it together yourself in the background. So you have to connect a lot of things, and you could have a problem right there. So if you don't want to deal with all that stuff, you could use the create React app, basically a command right here. So let's do that. Let's grab this, create React app, create. So this is create React app, and then an MBX is basically similar to MBM, but it's just a little bit faster and stuff, people say. And here's your app name. So we'll do that. Let's go to our terminal. Another thing you guys you learned already for most of you, but at the beginning you guys didn't learn about MBM. So let me just show you MBM. Most of you know right now what MBM is. MBM is a node package manager. It's basically the website where all the JavaScript packages are, and you could call packages like apps. It's basically a little code that you could download that will do something for you automatically, and you don't have to do any configuration most of the time. So node package manager is a huge repository of all the things you need to develop application. All right, so let's go back to our terminal. Zoom that in. And you could start me, guys, anytime. If you don't understand anything, you could start me at any moment. So feel free. So let's see. So let's just paste that code here. We're gonna change the name to Parse project, something like that. And then hit enter. And now, oh, okay. So there's some restriction about that name. Let's say Parse project 1. Okay. And now it's gonna go and grab. Okay. Oh, I cannot capitalize anymore. Okay, Parse project. Enter. So it's gonna go ahead and grab React for us. It's gonna grab all the code we need for React. It's gonna set up everything for us. It's gonna download Babel, Webpack, and everything we need, put it together and make it so that we can easily use it. So it's gonna be done soon. It's gonna depend on your computer most of the time. So it might take a while. If your computer is a little bit slower, it might not take so long if your computer is fast. So let's cd into that file. Oh, actually, we're already in a folder called Parse project. Okay. So that's going to confuse something. So let's go back and create it here. So paste Parse project, no capital. And it's going to create again. Sakir, how you doing? Can you hear me? I think I need to grab some headphones.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. It gave me the notification for the earbuds dying. CD Parse project. So, and then we're just gonna open it with VS Code. All right. So now this is our React app. So it has basically the public file, which is where it kind of like has the HTML. This is the only important part of this file. The HTML is how React connects to the browser. So every time you want to view something in the browser, you cannot view a JavaScript code. So in the browser, it doesn't know how to compile a JavaScript code. So what you need to do is you need to connect your React to this. I mean, it's already connected, but it goes to right here. All your React code goes to here, and then everything renders there. So that's the only important thing about this public file. The source file is where you're gonna start your React development. So this is where you're gonna do all the development. You have an app.css, it's just a CSS file. App.js mostly is not the inter file. It's basically the file, the home file or the base file. This is where you kind of like put all your components so that they all come together in one application. app.test, usually React automatically adds a test files for you. So we're not going to learn about tests and all that stuff. So we're going to ignore that. We'll delete that. Actually, let's delete that. So you guys are not confused about it. Index.css is just a basic HTML stuff, CSS stuff. Index.js is the entry point to React. So this is where your React and your HTML connect. As you can see here, we have what you guys already learned, which is documented.getElementsById root. And root is, remember, we saw in public index.html file. So basically, React connects your connects HTML from here, and then React says, okay, let's render whatever is in here, and that is app.js, which is the one we just saw, and then app.js, you could connect all your other components here, and then everything gets nested within each other. There's also logo here. This is the React logo, report web vitals, all this stuff. You don't need it. You don't need setup tests, all this, so we can just delete all this. We could delete the logo. We don't need it. Our app is gonna break. We have to remove the logo from where it's located. So from here, here we have to remove it from here. So I have to kind of clean up something here. Just say here. So we're gonna say React. On app.js, there is this vital report vital thing. Got to remove it, clean things up, save, and then yeah. So and then after that, this git ignore thing is automatically installed. It means it's related to Git, which you guys learned at the beginning. Basically, it's ignoring some files that you don't need to send it to like GitHub. So it's ignoring like node modules, which is right here, which is all the files you need. But when you send it to GitHub, you don't need the node modules. All those packages and everything in here, you're never gonna touch that. So never go into Node.js and change something from here. This is automatically managed by your code when you use an npm install and npm remove or npm uninstall. So you never touch that. And then package.json is a specification file. So this is basically, it's going to show you a project name, project version, and then dependencies. So these are like the packages that are already installed in your React. And then some scripts. These scripts are basically how to manage your React. Basically, if you want to start, if you want to start, you say something like npm start. If you want to build it, you say npm build, and it's going to build. Basically, the build you don't have to worry about right now, but it's going to create a HTML and CSS files for you automatically. README is a simple thing that just a basic file that has descriptions and instructions. And don't worry about this yarn.log. It's the same as package.json. Not the same. It's if you don't have a yarn installed in your computer, you're not going to see it. So don't worry about it. Just install npm. All right. So now we understand the files. We can go ahead and start the application. So we open a new terminal and we npm start. I'm going a little bit faster because I'm expecting most of you to know all of this. So, all right. Oh, Zakiya, you can hear me. Okay, you just can't talk. Okay, that's fine. I just saw your message. All right, so we have our React app working. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and basically set up a basic app. This is a basic component. Let's import here React from React, right? So so at the beginning you import stuff. So now I imported React. Most of the time you need to have React imported in every component. In here, as you can see, this is a function. This is what we call a component. So usually you will have a functional component. There's also a class component. The function component has a return method or return, it returns something like a normal function, but that it returns something called JSX, which we talked about. You could also turn this into a functional component, not functional, class component by just changing this function, calling a class, and then basically we'll get to that in the future, but now just think of components are functional components. Don't worry about the class. Okay, so now we have this. Let's create a basic app with the state. So in React, especially in functional component, we have something called hooks. So if we go ahead and look for hooks, React hooks. Hooks are ways to interact with your React components. We have several hooks. Let's see, where are the hooks? Let's see, let's go back here. Hooks at glance. Okay, I don't know why this is too close. So we have several hooks. We have state hook, which is basically creates a state for us. What does that mean? What does creating a state mean? It means you could store the components data in there. So whatever the changes that are happening in the component, you could store in this right here. So this basically shows two things. It shows a count and set count. Count is the information that your component is going to show. So now count is going to show 0 right here. If you want to change it as 0 and maybe increase it or add it something else or decrease it, then you're going to use this. So you have two ways. This is the information and this is how you change it, right? And then the use state is the hook. Use state will basically keep track of your state. And a state is an object that you cannot manipulate directly. The only way to manipulate it is by using set whatever. So it could be anything here, the word, but you have to say set. So the only way to manipulate it is by using set and then kind of copying the state, the origin state, and then manipulating again. So you have to copy the state. So we use state to indicate that this is the current state of our app. So let's do that. Let's actually create that here. So we say const, and then we say count, and then here's set count. It's equal to use state. Let's set it to 0. Now we're gonna have an error if we run our app, which is right here. It basically says we have to import a use state, and I misspelled it. It has to be like that, use state. So to import use state, we go up here and import it. Use state. Now what we can do is we can console log our state, right? So we could say console log, just like in JavaScript, and you console log your state, which is count, save it. If you go to up here, you'll see that the console log is 0. And also it says we have set, but we haven't used it. So that's also something to keep in mind. So we have our state set up. Now we're going to create a set counter. So we're going to create a way to increment a number, to increase a number. So let's call it here React counter. Let's give this a h2, and then just create a basic. Let's create a basic. Let's first show the state. So to show the state, we just say paragraph. I think somebody is not muted. Ahmed, welcome. I think you're not muted. So let's say here count. So if you just say that, that means you're basically showing your current state, which is 0 now. So if we look at our app, it shows 0. So it's that simple to show your state. So Now, what we need to do is we need to manipulate our state. So let's actually give this a count name so that we know what that 0 is. So it shows count. The next thing is we need a button to change the state, to manipulate the state, right? So, and button is just normal button. So just like in HTML, you create a button here. Let's call it something like add one. And if you go back to the app, it shows add one. You should add one now. There's nothing happening because this button has nothing, no functionality. To add functionality to this button, we're just going to add something called onClick, which is same as JavaScript. So just the syntax is a little bit different. So we're going to add onClick. The onClick needs to have a callback inside it. So we're going to create a callback function. This callback function is going to call, it's going to return the set state, set count. So right here, set count. And then set count is going to take the current count, Give me a second, guys. I'm going to get a earphones because my earbuds are, I think, dead. So give me 1 second. All right. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you guys can hear me well. So we're gonna call so this callback function is gonna return set count, which is the way to change the state. And inside here, we're gonna pass our current state, which is count, plus 1. So that means we add in 1 here. So now if we go back to our app, this should work and should add 1 here. Just like that, we're adding 1. And then the next thing is another button we can add, which will multiply by 5. So let's do that button, multiply by 5, multiply by 5. So help me with this, guys. How do we do this one? It's the same style.
Callback function, arrow, and then set count, and then inside set count, you're doing the count times 5.
Set count times 5, exactly. So we're gonna grab the current count and then we're gonna multiply by 5. So that is an easy way to multiply by 5. So this is basically changing the state. We can reset it by refreshing it. Now, if we say multiply by 5, nothing's gonna happen. That's because it's a 0. If you multiply 0 by anything, it's nothing. So let's just say 1 to start with, and then multiply by 5. That's how add by 1. So all that is working. We could, so help me with the reset. How do we do reset? How do we go back to 0? So how do we go back to 0? And we're gonna call this reset. We wanna go back to 0. How do we do that?
Like you're gonna create initial state.
Initial state. So what you could do is, so you could create initial state, which is just a variable that can hold a number 0, which will, or number 1, which will set to 0. So let's say const initial state, which is 0. And this is, we can set this to 0 because it doesn't make sense to have 1. We're just gonna call that, right? So so in our callback, what should we do here? Should we call set count and then call the initial, or should we just call initial?
Call initial.
Just call initial. Okay. Do you guys think that's gonna work? Is that valid? Should we say initial here?
I think so. With curly brackets.
Curly brackets. Okay. So let's see if that works. Sorry. So we have some issue here in line 32. Line 32, it's not even there. What do you guys think? We're getting an error.
Change it to,
Remember that if you we wanna manipulate the state, we wanna set this to 0. And how do we set the count to 0?
Is it like you do set count and then you put initial state inside?
Yeah, so we'll do set count to start with and then put the initial state. Because we're trying to set the state to 0. Now, if we say initial count to 0, if we just say initial count to 0, that means it's already 0, right? So it's not gonna set anything to 0. So when you click the button, it's basically gonna say, oh, that's 0. I don't know what are you trying to do. But now, if we say set count, we are basically checking the state. We're checking this and saying, is it more than 0? Yes, now set it to 0, right? So that's generally what it's doing. So if we add sum, multiply sum, set, that's sets to 0. So that's how you manipulate the state. Always use the set and whatever the name is. That's the only way to manipulate the state. You cannot directly manipulate it. So this the count is you cannot add something to it. You cannot subtract anything to it. You cannot manipulate it. You could only take it and use the set count, which in the background basically copies the state and then adds something to the new copy. So that's usually how you change it. And in the future, you guys are gonna learn how to manipulate it in a different way. Okay. So this is basically it. So this is how you build a component. You could use different methods of how to manipulate it. You could set up the state like this. You could set up multiple states. So you could say const. You could create something else here. Let's say instead of count, let's say number, and then here set number, and then use the state. So you could set up as many states as you want, and then use that. So basically, there's no limit to how many states you could create. So let's go back to our original lesson and see if we covered most of that stuff. So explain what components are and how they work, explain what the state is in a web application, and demonstrate how to make the React component stateful. To make a React component stateful is by creating a state like this, and the state has some data. So now this one has 0. That means this component is stateful. When it's stateless, it means it doesn't have a state. It just returns JSX and that's it. So that's what stateful means. And then we change the state using a click listener. Remember, in JavaScript, you have to set up a what do you call add event listener to manipulate anything, to change anything, or to listen. You have to listen to the click first, and then after that, you have to find a way to manipulate it. So, but this one you just use the onClick and then callback function. Inside the callback function, remember that when you're using a arrow functions, this basically means this. So onClick, this is basically a shortened version of this function. Basically, it's an empty function. So you could just leave it like that, and then say that, and then return, and then you return set count, right? So this whole thing is this part. So So this curly brackets and the return are kind of like omitted basically in callback functions. So any question so far? Most of you know this. Hopefully you guys understand.
معلم,
Ah,
I have a question. You said normally in the return the JS file.
yeah, JSX.
Normally you should have a parent element, right? Like the div or section.
Yep.
Okay. Let's say if you wanna render or display like a couple of things that are different, like so how many things you can put, like Marcus, what are you gonna put in there? Like a piece or like more divs? How's that gonna work?
So so at the end of the day, you could put an empty div like that, and then you could display other divs here. So you could say one div here. So and this div will display a paragraph. It'll display test. And so now you have one div here. You could create another div if you like. So this is a header. And now, but you have one that is main. So you have to keep one. There's also something called fragment, which is like this. So these are called React fragment. So it's just like there's like empty tag. So these also work. So React fragments are also, they also work. So if you want to just keep it clean, you could use the React fragment. Okay. Yes, like this. It's just a simple tag that is empty. So you could call it just React fragment, or you could just leave it empty if you like. Where is it? Yeah, I think, yeah, it's right here. So short syntax is just leaving it empty and then slash, and that means it will take care of what you just wanted, which is having everything in one tag. So that also works, or you could just use a simple div, and that will take care of that, right? So you could put everything else in one div. You could have multiple divs, multiple headers, multiple things in here, but they have to have one thing that they have all in common, and that is every component, not only just this component. Right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. So if we don't have this, we're going to have a huge error. It's actually going to show you in here. Yeah, so it says JSX expressions must have one parent element, right? It automatically going to show you.
So how do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of. Can you go back to the other example that you just showed us? The on-click button.
The
You want to add
on-click.
an event listener. I mean the event listener on this account.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
You want to add event listener.
Yes.
So yeah, so the event listener is only for JavaScript. In React, you don't need to use any event listeners. You don't need any of something that and add event listener. You don't need that, right? That's only in Java, pure JavaScript. So this is not part of React at all, right? Unless you want to do it in here, maybe you created a function here, and that function does a special thing, and you want to add some event listener, but most of the time you handle your event listeners with just on click, and you'll be good, right? So
sorry, I think I meant like click listener. Sorry.
yeah, so the on click is same as JavaScript. Just I think JavaScript is called click. On click JavaScript. Yeah, I think it's called on click too. It's right here. So on click. But yeah, this one is calling a function. So yeah, so when you click it, it's going to show you something, and it's calling a function. So right here, it's calling a function called my function, and my function is just showing this information, this inner HTML. Just the spelling is different. This one is on click with a lowercase c, but in React it's uppercase C. Keep that in mind. That's the only difference. Other than that, whatever you do inside here is up to you. Either this is doing a callback function, and that callback function is returning the state, and that's kind of like the syntax for React. But in JavaScript, you could do whatever you want here. You could just literally say alert. You could just say here, you could alert something here. Alert. Hi. So hopefully that works. I'm not sure if it's gonna work. No, don't think it works. Yeah, you have to escape and all that stuff. But yeah, you could do anything you want in React in JavaScript. But in React, it has its own syntax, special syntax. Yeah. Any other question?
For the Create React app,
Yeah.
when you downloading that, can you put it in the VS Code, or is normally put it in the terminal?
You could put it in the VS Code, it's fine. The VS Code terminal and the normal terminal are exactly the same most of the time. So the way you know it is by the name here. If you have Windows, it should say something like bash or something like that, git bash. So if it says bash here and the one you have is bash, the bash one, then that's exactly the same. So you could just use here the same way. Usually the reason you don't use it in VS Code is because VS Code, you open it with the project. So you have to open an empty VS Code and then open the terminal. So go to here, go to is it this, and then new terminal. And then in here you say npx create React app, like that. And then you name it. Make sure you are in the folder you're expecting to put that project in. So CD to that. But yeah, you could do the same thing.
You do it one time, or like every time you're doing a new project you do?
So if you do a new project and I tell you to start from scratch, then yeah, you start and create a new React app. If I gave you a already installed React app, then you work on that. But let's say you want to start something from scratch, then yeah, of course you will have to use that command to create it. So the command will be somewhere here. So right here, basic command like this. You could put it somewhere as a note, and then all you need to change is the name of the app, which is right here. And then it's going to bring everything together, and then you cd into your app, the name, and then you say npm start, and that's it. You don't need to do npm install, because when you originally install it, it's going to install all the packages you need. So this is the easy command to start React. Most of the libraries, JavaScript libraries, have that. They have like a simple command to run, and it's going to start the project for you automatically. Yeah. So I'll say write down that somewhere, and most of the time I'll give you this in the assignments. So I'll tell you, use this to start a new app. Okay. Any other question? And also, if you want React to function really good in here, install some React extensions. So just put like React here, and you see here a lot of React. So I will install something like this is a good React called React snippets. So this helps you with something like, let's say I want to create a new component. So let's say here as a components, and I just created a simple component. Let's say example here .js. So I have an empty here. Instead of just, it's good that you practice instead of importing your React here and doing all that. You could just say RCF, which is React component functional component, React functional component, and enter, and it's just going to give you the component setup already with the name of the component and everything, right? If you want to do a class component, you say RCC, I think, yeah, and that's going to create a class component for you. So that is called React snippets. So it's React, Redux, GraphQL, and React Native snippets. A lot of people install this, like a lot, 2 million people. So and then you could find other ones that you like. Just read their instructions and what they do. There's a Kite autocomplete. Kite is, I used it for a little bit. It's really powerful, but it is like the autocomplete. So whatever you're trying to write, it's gonna complete it for you. There's a simple React snippets. So mostly just the snippets will be good, and then there's some markings. So you could most of the time you'll find some that will complete things for you. So instead of you writing something from, like, let's say you write a command something like P, it's gonna write the ending one for you, like the ending tag for you automatically. If you change this tag to H1, this one doesn't do it, but there is a snippet, there is a extension that will also change this instead of you changing that. So things like that will help you. Okay, any question so far? All right. Okay, if you guys don't have any question, what are you gonna do is, since you already, most of you done the project, so let's go back to here, click here. So this would be the football score project. Most of you did it. If you haven't done it, do it. If you did it but you haven't completed, I would say go back to it and try to finish it, inshallah. One thing we're gonna do is, inshallah, we're not gonna move forward until you guys all do the assignment. So I will look into the, I always look at the assignment, and then I see who submitted and who doesn't. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so today is Wednesday. You guys have tomorrow to do this assignment, and then inshallah on Friday we can come together and do the next lesson, which is this one, the props and all that, and then you will have until Monday to submit the assignment for this one, and then inshallah probably Monday we're going to do this one. So we're just going to go a little bit faster on first week, so this week, and then inshallah the next one, even starting with React routers, we're going to slow down and we're going to make it 2 days each assignment.
Thank you so much.
No problem,
So,
inshallah. All right, guys.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry.
Oh yeah, my question is, I don't know. I was trying to see while I was on Gabi school. Some of the assignments, can you send us individual what the if the assignment has been graded, if you received the assignment, to kind of see if you already seen it, and then like what the assignments that we're missing individual, as you could see all the submission, so that way
like a feedback,
like a summary of like the progress of individual. Okay. So that
yeah, definitely. I definitely was doing it at the beginning, and then I just kind of slowed down. So I was giving you guys feedback here. What I'm gonna do is, inshallah, I'm gonna go back to this, and I'm gonna find a way to give you automatic like feedback of like you submitted, thank you, like maybe an email or something like that, that I can connect to. I use Airtable, so Airtable right here. So I use Airtable to collect the forms that you guys submit, and I think there is a way to make it automatic so that you guys can get a feedback they submitted. But yeah, the feedback, the manual feedback, I have to, so it's kind of like a long process. I have to go to the Airtable, look at the assignment, click the link to the project. So it's going to take me here, and then look at your specific branch, and then click your code. Recently, I actually found an easier way to actually test instead of like downloading your code and all that stuff. What I can do is I can just go to here, and type, maybe this will be a tip for you guys. Type Blitz here. So after GitHub, write Blitz and then enter. And there's a website that will automatically open the whole project without you installing anything or doing anything. So this will show you like the React, it will run the project and all that stuff. So so I have to do this and look at your project. Okay, you finish this, you finish that, good. And then I have to go back and grade it and do all that stuff. So it just a little bit get tiring, but I have to go back and redo the, inshallah, I'll give you the feedback of each project, inshallah. Now we went back, so I'll have time to catch up, inshallah, with the assignments. So I'll do that. No problem. Any other questions? All right, we'll conclude it here, inshallah. Any questions you have, send me anytime. Try to submit it and try to go back to the project and see if you've finished all the requirements. And then inshallah, we're gonna move to the next project, inshallah, on Friday. So inshallah, assalamu alaikum.